Weekend Watch is back after a week break. However, our last show did show a couple of big price winners. Andrew chucked up Aberama Gold at 18-1. I chucked up Sumo Sam at 25s. There was a 4-1 win in there for good measure. I even put up a nap and a next best on Saturday on the Twitter page for GG. Both of them won, so I'm on flying form with the flat. We are going through the 7 ITV races. They're coming across from Newbury, Newmarket and Ripon. The sun is back. It's proper summer jumps racing. It actually looks pretty good. Some very competitive action in the mix as well. And there's some seriously good action, I think, too. The first race we kick off with is the 150 at Newbury. It's the Jeffrey Freer Stakes. It's a Group 3 over 1 mile, 5.5 furlongs. And we've got the beaten Derby favourite lining up in here. I'm not going to say too much on this one because there is a horse that I do fancy quite strongly. And I want to see what you guys make of the race first. So, Andrew, as the man that tipped up Aberama Gold for us at a big price on the last show, do you think you've got the winner of the 150?
Yeah, sorry to hear you've been ill, Dave. You said you've been chucking up a lot recently. At least it's big prize winners and not your dinner. Yeah, this is an interesting race, this one. I want it to be against the front two in the betting. I don't trust that Newmarket July course form when Kamari beat Outbox. Basically, you look at that, the winner, the second and the third were pretty much 1, 2, 3 throughout. It's obviously hard to come from off the pace. And you look at that, Al Arcee was in 5th place under a patient ride. July course form is very difficult to trust nowadays. Arrest is reliant on soft ground. I think they're calling it good with rain forecast, but you look at the amount of rain they're forecast, it's less than they'd put on if they were watering. So I don't think it's going to be proper muddy, which I think Arrest needs. So I'm happy to take him on at 4-1. I mean, even if he gets his ground, he's not exactly 100% convincing. Klondike was one of two that I liked. He was one who was inconvenienced by the pace bias at Newmarket last time, finishing 4th to Castle Way. Again, trying to make ground from the back on the July course, unless there's a headwind, is very, very tricky. And that's what he tried to do with not beating far last time behind Castle Way. And the other one, my old friend Shandoz, he's had a whole load of problems throughout his career. He went into my tracker when he won at Wolverhampton on the 21st of September 2019. He crept around the inside rail where the Tapeta surface was deeper that day, came from off the pace on a pace favouring track. He only won by a head at 9-4, but he performed miracles to do so. He then won his next 2 at Ascot, and then we didn't see him for the best part of a year after he was beaten at Newmarket on his final start in 2020. He's gone well fresh before. He's been off. He returns from another long break. It wouldn't want it too soft, but if the rain stays away, I think I'll have to go Shandoz over Klondike in this race. But yeah, certainly taking on the front two is the way I'm going.
Interesting, Matty. How do you see the race, mate?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Andrew. Take on Kamari, who I do think was flattered in the Fred Archer last time out. Obviously, Al Arcee completely bombed out. The half a length second Outbox was rated £9 lower. I think we can safely say New London's not the horse he was last season. And he was beating the 7 lengths in Germany next time out. Phantom Flight in 4th, also beating the 7 lengths next time out. So I think the form's not stacked up whatsoever. And he's been beaten 9 lengths and 6 lengths at Newbury, both in this grade before. So I think he's certainly worth taking on. I'm going to take him on with his half brother as well, Klondike. They're different sizes in the same dam. One well here over 1 mile 3 when immediately looking at he needed further straight away. You could straight away tell. Then he bumped into the Queen's Vase winner Gregory Goodwood, and it was out pace 4 furlongs out, looked to need a further again. Then, as Andrew said, went to 4th in the Bahrain Trophy at Newmarket. I don't think he quite handled the track there, the undulations. Hung left under pressure, so you'd imagine the return to Newbury should suit. And given that he recorded an RPR of 109 on just his 3rd start as well, Kamari recorded one of 110, but it's plausible to suggest that Klondike has more natural improvement in him. 4 of the last 6 runners have been won by 3-year-old as well, which bodes well for him. And William Haggis has a 31% strike rate in non-handicaps at Newbury in the last 5 years. Regarding the rest of the field, I don't think any of them have a decent chance. To be honest with you, Arrest is he needs soft ground, and he's a strange one to weigh up, isn't he? Shandoz, he's won twice off a layoff of over a year, but he's coming back off 2 years now, so it's hard to weigh up how he is. Jack Darcy, I do think he will have his day in the sun, but he's a keen goer. Enemies, I think the last one a handicap in Maydan in February. He's been beaten out of sights and all starts since. And Louisa Casati should have run well at Goodwood last time out on the soft ground. So I think there's plenty of negatives for the field, and I can't see many for Klondike.
Superb. I mean, it's quite an exciting, interesting first race. I think this is one of the best races of the day. I actually think this is my best bet of the day in the race as well. And both of you have just sort of like overshot him. So maybe this will show my noviciness in the flat sphere. But you touched on the fact there we've had 4 of the last 6 winners have been 3-year-olds. We've only got the 2 3-year-olds in here, which are Arrest and Klondike. Favourites won 5 of the last 7 renewals. Hookham was a winner, winning 2020 and 2021 back-to-back. We can have some like properly good horses winning this. I'm with you guys on Kamari. Like, doesn't really need to be said now because I'm just throwing myself under the bus for no reason. But I'm against Kamari. The fact that he's only won just once from 12 races since August 2021, and he's been wearing cheap pieces lows, just means I don't think he's a very trustworthy horse. So I don't like that. And the fact that the 3-year-olds have got a good record on him, he's got to give some weight away as well. Like, that's the final nail in the coffin for Kamari. So I think he's a bad favourite. I don't think he will go a favourite in this race. I think Arrest will go a favourite in the race. Now, I do know what you're both saying about the soft ground side of it, because I started to look at him. We can see that his best form, obviously, this season with the beginning of the year when he won at Chester, that was on soft ground, made him go off favourite for a derby. You don't go off favourite for a derby for no reason. His form on that like ground where there is some ease in there is 1-2-1. That includes a Group 3, a Group 1. He is dropping back here. This is a Group 3, right? So as much as his form in those better class races has been poor, and I'd rather he was running a little bit better, if he was running a little bit better, I think he'd be a short price for this, or they might not be deciding to drop him back. Now, in terms of the ground, when he ran at Epsom, I mean, if you're a Derby horse, you should better handle anything. But obviously, he's not a Derby horse, and this isn't a Derby. But he just looked really unbalanced and looked quite unnatural as a horse in that race at Epsom. And I remember reading some comments after from connections. They were talking about maybe taking him to the Curragh, thinking that would be a track that would suit him better. Just saying that he was unbalanced because it was quick ground on a course that was like that, like an Epsom. Ascot's got a bit of a dip, so it was quicker ground there again, so potentially looked like maybe it was the ground, but may have actually been the course. They think if he'd run at Epsom on soft ground, he would have been fine. But if he was to run on a conventional track, and I would say that Newbury is very much a conventional track, they think that he will handle quicker ground. So obviously it is a slight bit of a question mark, but that does mean...
What about Ascot not being a... Don't you rate that as a more conventional track when he bombed out last time?
No, I don't think Ascot is a conventional track. I think it's got a bit of a dip in there, and I think there's plenty of horses that first time up at Ascot seem to know, like maybe need the run, and then next time after, I think they handle the course a little bit better. So I'd say Newbury, Haydock, ones like that, they're just your bog standard pancakey ones. But this is the point of the game, right? All opinions. 4-1 Arrest is absurd to me. I think this horse deserves to go a favourite. It will be interesting to see if there is money behind it as well, because obviously, like I say, he went off 4-1 for Derby. This isn't a Derby, and I would like to see some market confidence. So I think he is the best bet on Saturday, given the fact that I don't truly believe that he does need the ease in the ground. It may be the case that he does, or it may be the case that he's gone a little bit. So I'm going for Arrest. So that means in this race, in this field of 8, we've given up 3, but we're all taking on the favourite. So Andrew, you were Shandoz.
Yeah, I'm with Shandoz over Klondike. I'll probably do a reverse forecast on the pair, but I won't be getting massively involved in the race.
Superb. And then Matt, you're Klondike.
Yeah, definitely Klondike for me.
And quite fancy him?
Yeah, quite strongly. I think there's little negatives about him. I know he's unexposed. I know he's not got I do think he'll win personally. I just think he's unexposed. He's got plenty of potential, and should go well.
I like it, and I do really like Arrest, and I'm like a very price-driven person. So I would, when I priced this market up before we got the final declarations, I would have had Arrest in a field like this, probably sub 2-1, and then obviously we'd see how the market would peter out after that. So I reckon he'll get smashed up. I really, really, really fancy Arrest. Anyway, that's enough about one race of the day. We'll move on to the Grey Horse Handicap over 6 furlongs, the 205 at Newmarket. Races like this, I know they're not, and it's probably quite disrespectful to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, reminds me of when I used to go to Walthamstow Dogs and they'd get the Afghan race out at the beginning of racing. It does feel like a bit of a novelty one, but obviously it's not. They've got just as much ability as the rest. We've got the last 2 winners of the race, Strike and Mitros on Fire. but it looks to be a really, really competitive betting heat. So I don't think I'm going to be able to find any pointers for the viewers out there. Matty, is this the sort of race that you like to get stuck into, and can you find us the winner?
Not from a punting perspective, no, but visually it's a brilliant sight, isn't it? Seeing flock of grey thoroughbreds travelling in tandem down the Newmarket Straight. But it's, as I say, it's a nightmare to back in. The angle I have gone for is the Mitros on Fire one. Obviously won the race off a mark of 85 in 2021. He's back on that mark as well. And he's followed a similar path as well. He's raced at Newmarket twice and then Ascot, which this season, which he did in 2021. And he gave quite a good account of himself at Ascot. He raced in the unfavourable side in the Moe and Shandon International Stakes. Beaten 8 lengths, found a bit of trouble in running. And Greg Shen just gave him a hands and heels ride in the finish. Prior to that, it was third behind Star of Orion, who finished third in that race at Ascot on the near side. So the form probably backs up as well. And he drops back into Class 4 company for the first time since this race. And that's my only angle. No strong opinion, but I think he's got to go well if I say Marky won it in 2021.
Excellent. And I could have it wrong, Andrew, but I would imagine this is the sort of race that you do like to get stuck into. It's a reasonable size field, regardless of the colour. And again, it is a competitive looking betting heat. So who do you fancy?
Yeah, I love this race. And pre-kids, I'd always go to this meeting. It's a great sight on a hot summer's afternoon in the July course, seeing all these greys in the pre-parade ring and then the paddock itself. And the one I'm going with, I think I'm napped in Racing and Football Outlook this week, is number 9 Devil's Angel, who's as big as 25 to 1. Now he's got a strong seasonal pattern to his form. He peaks in July and August. He's had 7 handicap runs in July and August on good or faster turf or the all-weather. He's won 4 of them, finished 5th in the other 3. One of those 5th places came in this race previously behind Mitros on Fire, when he was an 11 to 2 shot, a very similar mark to what he's racing on Saturday. He blew the start, he reared up, completely blew it. You had to be prominent, typical July course, and he's finished 5th, doing best of those who came from off the pace, beating 2 lengths in total, leaving the firm impression that had he got any sort of run. So had he made any sort of clean start, he would have gone close at least. Now, last year they didn't run him in this. They went to Sandown instead, where he finished close up 5th, beat a length and a half, a 5 furlong handicap. And I just think he's got a great chance off 76. I think he was off 77 when he was unlucky in this race 2 years ago. So yeah, Devil's Angel he won't be 22 to 1, 25 to 1 by the time I get stuck into him anyway. So yeah, that's where we're going for this.
I like it. That's the thing. Like, it is a good race. As much as I called it a novelty, and like I say, it's a bit disrespectful to say it like it is. It's a class betting heat as well. So 2 selections in that one. I'm not throwing anything in. Matt's gone 4. Mitros on Fire. He's a 12 to 1 poke at the time of recording. And as Andrew touched on there, Devil's Angel, you can get as big as 25 to 1. 5 places in there. I mean, you're going to have to hang around to find out if that's Andrew's actual GG weekend watch nap as well. But before we do that, which is a long way away, got to move back to Newbury. We've got the 225. It's the Highclere Castle Gin handicap. It's over 5 furlongs. This is a race, another one that I've actually dug into quite a bit. Feel like there's a few that I want to give a mention to that I can make a little bit of a case for. As it stands on the prices we've got on Thursday night, again, another one that looks like a competitive betting heat. If you look at the market, we've got 4 a day, Libra Tiger at 6 to 1 joint favourites, top prices. You've got Swift Asset, Wolverhampton, Desperate Hero, all in behind at about 6, 7 or 8 to 1. Harry Brown's in there as well, 12s in some places, but a short 7 to 1 in others. Does look like a really competitive heat. So as I say, there's a couple or a few that I'm going to mention, but I'm going to hand it back to you, Andrew, just to kick off, because you might be able to say what I'm going to say better if you mention Katie Content, Swift Asset, or Punch Bowl Flyer. Yeah,
cracking race this one. I've sort of had a good look at it, like you. 4 a day, disappointed in the first time. First time blinkers for Rod Mullman is a very positive angle on fillies, but she was a bit disappointing when only 3rd as a 13 to 8 favourite at Foss last time. I can leave her alone at the price. Libra Tiger, of course, is due to run as we record this on Thursday evening at Windsor. I think in a racing league race. I'm not sure whether he will come out again, so there could be a rule for if you are playing in this race. Swift Asset, my concern with this one was that both his wins have come on good to firm ground at Bath and Windsor, so it's just a case of how much rain they get. And that would be something to keep an eye on for him. Desperate Hero was the first one I was interested in. He was nibbled at when the final decks came out. Ran about 12 to 1 now. He ran in JM Jungle's race at Goodwood. He was drawn high towards the near side rail. Would have been an advantage a day or two earlier, but on that particular day, you wanted to be down the middle of the track. And he's done third best of the near side runners. I thought he'd go well. Fantasy Master was another one. He bombed out last time, but he often bounces back from a poor effort to run well next time. Since he's joined Darrell Holland, he's been unplaced on 3 occasions. The first of those, it was followed by a 20 to 1 win. The second one followed by a 6 to 1 second, and the third one followed by a 10 to 1 win. So small sample size, but Fantasy Master is always a horse who's gone well at Doncaster and Nottingham and nice flat, tracks. And I thought he could go well here at a price. When the dealing's done, he'll probably draw people in again because he's well handicapped. But he's been well handicapped when he's been beaten for several of his recent races. Katie Contents, it was the fresh angle, I think, with her, isn't it? That she's been off for 63 days. She's had the one run this year, wrong conditions really. I'm guessing listed company, dropping into a handicap for the first time for a yard that does well here, could run some sort of race. And Punchbowl Flyer, I love the old boy when he was at his peak. He needed proper soft ground, not good to soft in places. You're talking like, ideally heavy, survived 3 inspections. Now he turned up for John O'Shea for the first time. I think he'd actually make money back in switches to this yard with strike rates low, but he often pops up with one at a big price. But this Punchbowl Fly couldn't even win under his preferred conditions from his last couple of starts for Eve Johnson Horton. But he really needs it, soft, heavy in places, heavy, not good to soft in places kind of thing. So he's the most interesting one for the autumn, but I'd leave him alone on Saturday. So I'll go with Desperate Hero for the Jack Shannon yard, but it's not a race I'm going to have a bet in.
Good man. Well, I went through it and thought there was a few that were worth mentioning. You've mentioned a few that I wasn't going to mention. So, Matty, if you can cover off maybe only a handful of them, I reckon between the 3 of us, we'll get every single horse a mention in it. How do you see this? It's a 5 furlong dash, class 3. Who are you getting stuck into?
I've just gone for the one, and she's in my column, my GG column as well. It's Wolverhampton for Rod Millman. She got back to winning ways last time out in her second time blinkers. She was previously head second to Glamorous Breeze at Windsor. She reversed the form next time out, and I think you can upgrade that a little bit. She hit the front quite early. She wandered a little bit as well, but Ross Coakley, he managed to straighten her up, and she won quite a shade cosy as well. So the blinkers, they're still on. Hopefully they continue to work a treat. She was rated 91 as a 2-year-old, so a mark of 87. It shouldn't be too bad. I know she's gone up £4, but she's still got some handicap and scope. And a record at Newbury as well: 2 wins, a 3rd and a 5th. Never been beaten over 2.5 lengths, including when 2nd in the Super Sprint here last year. And I always like it when a filly's won outside of a 3-year-old company or filly's company as well. Shows she has got some tough qualities. And so I think as long as the blinkers continue to work a treat, I think she'll run quite well.
Excellent. Right, so the few that I sort of whittled it down to for fancying, I was going for them in price order because that was the order that I looked at the race. This one had already been formed, like the reformed market. For a day, I struggled to see why he was favourite, but albeit like it is tight at the head of the market, not necessarily up there. I don't think any of us are giving a favourable mention towards that one. Punchbowl Flyer is just that, like Andrew says, like he's a lovable old one. He did win on good to firm, but like when he was a lot younger horse, does look like he needs the dig in the ground now. He has won here before as well now. And when you try and look at the break angle with him, you can't really make head nor tail of it because off the prices that he's been, relative chances, you wouldn't necessarily expect him to have been winning on those reappearances, but he did have a good run here after a 266-day break, and that was on good ground. So like we're touching on, he might have needed ease in the grounds to perform even better than that, but he's probably not going to get the grounds to make him anywhere near enough of a horse to mention for a bet. Swift Asset's interesting. But again, when I look at the price, he probably is priced about correctly. It's 2 from 12 on the turf, but the last 3 runs have shown that he's back to either probably his best or maybe even better than he's been before. Their RPRs have 86, 89 and 90. Had been tried in decent company, and I'm probably getting drawn into this way too much because he was well beaten, but he was up against Shaquille before he went and won his handicap and then went and did what he did. So been raced and tried in higher company. Maybe this is going to be a lot easier. And I do think if you're running against those better horses, especially 5 furlongs when they go in like a mad dash for it, finding it a bit easier in him might be a help. But then sometimes it can be a hindrance. Maybe they don't go quite quick enough in here. So there was enough to, I'll get the bingo one in here, to temper enthusiasm with Swift Asset. Katie Content's the one that I landed on because I think I can make enough of a case to suggest that 12 to 1 could be too big a price. Handicap debut, so that's always like a nice, interesting one. It's off a mark of 86 as well. She ran in a listed race at Sandown, and this was one of the races that I did watch live. I like to watch them back after. But I remember watching this. She was never going to probably win the race. She was never going to get really close to it, but she did get squeezed for room inside the final furlong. I watched it back again today. She didn't exactly pick up loads, but they didn't seem so worried about where they finished with her, I would have thought. Like they weren't fighting for a gap. They could have done a little bit more to get her a clear run if they needed to. That was after a 309-day break. Obviously, she's been dropped a few pounds for it, which seems reasonable, but don't think she was there to do her best. Like she probably did need that run. So I think that's potentially a positive. If you go back to Group 2 Queen Mary Stakes effort, which is quite a while back, but she finished 6th in there. It actually is quite a good race. The form of that one's worked out quite nicely. A horse that was ahead behind, Olivia Meralda's now rated 109. Half a length in front was a next time out winner, albeit rated around about the same as she is. In 4th was the Wesley Ward filly. That's won a couple of times since in listed races and got decent RPR the next time out. And obviously the winner dramatised. Won the Temple Stakes at Haydock at the start of the season. Was a short price to go and win at Ascot this year. So just thinking much calmer waters, especially considering she's rated at 86. I think she's one to keep on side of. It's also interesting as well for Clive Cox. Like he's happy to switch the jockeys about a bit. But Richard Kingscote is at Newbury on Saturday. He hasn't got a ride in this race, and Ross Orion does take them out. So I wonder, because she's been ridden by lots of different jockeys, whether Ross has been riding her in work or they just think that he might be able to get a better tune out of her. So Katie Content for me is the selection, and she's top price, 12 to 1 at the time of recording. So I think we've wrapped up that second race at Newbury, which means we will now be moving on. I'll just get myself together. Sorry, I'm just making a list of the selections I've got for after. So we're moving on to Ripon, the 240. It's the Silver Trophy handicap. It's over 6 furlongs, and we've got 19 of the potential 20 runners declared. Say potential 20, it's a max field side of 20. Fortemore, who was beaten favourite over course and distance last time out, is trying to hold on to favouritism. Got Mark's Choice and Thornaby Pell close in behind. It's 9 to 1 the field though, so it's another tricky looking handicap to dissect on paper. Matty, do you have any insight for us to whittle this 19 runner field down to one or a few?
Yeah, there was a few in here that I quite liked. I thought Northcliffe was interesting. The first time cheek pieces. I mean, he was third to Should Have Been a Ring as a 2-year-old. And Cooperation developed into a bit of a cliff horse for me. Backed him last time out at Goodwood when he was drawn on, well, he raced on the near side alongside another one. It was completely unfavourable, but he ran well there. And Benoit de la Serre takes a ride again. But I landed on Mark's Choice. He won the race off a £2 lower mark in 2021. And he loves it here at Ripon as well. I think he's got 7 wins, 5 places from 21 runs. And I mean, he was beaten easily at Doncaster last time out. I think it was 7 lengths. But he took his course record there to 0 from 6. And then, I mean, on recent form, you can't back him on recent form. But the more I look at him, the more I think he'd just be laid out for the race. And I mean, you look at when he won the race in 2021, I think he was beaten in 16 lengths at Pontefract, I think it was. And I mean, I know that was after his first one after wind surgery, but I mean, he bounced back with ease there. So it's hard to trust him on recent form. However, his record in August does read 3 wins, 4 places from 9 starts, and that does include a few here as well. So it's a competitive race. I mean, yeah, 7 to 1 the field. So something you want to get stuck into. But I've landed on Mark's Choice to go close to winning off a £2 lower mark than what I did in 2021.
Good man. Andrew, how do you see the race?
Yeah, draw-wise, I've been looking to go high, maybe middle to high. I know we get the occasions when we get low draw and big field sprint handicap winners at Ripon. They tend to be early season. If you break down the draw stats and big fields in August, it's generally higher numbers. I didn't have a great deal of time to look at this race. Matt makes a great case for Mark's Choice. Strong Johnson was the one I was most interested in for Paul Midgley. Midgley had a quiet July, but he's back to form of the vengeance at the moment. Had 5 winners recently, and this one hasn't won since joining the yard from Ireland this year. but he tends to come good at this time of year. If you sort his form on the Racing Post website by RPR, Racing Post ratings, his highest ratings have all come in sort of August, September time. And so we could be reaching peak Strong Johnson time. Stall 6, possibly not supersonic. Cooperation is another one on the radar, given that he was drawn on the wrong side at Goodwood last time. I'll be looking for a good run from was it Desperate Hero, one of the Jack Shannon horse I mentioned earlier on for that Newbury race, who also ran in that race. I think, no, I'll get my races confused. Ignore that. It's a Live in the Moment I was thinking of. It runs in the Great St Wilfrid later. Yeah, Corporation second choice. And interesting, there was money for American Star first run for Ruth Carr after leaving Ed Walker. But Ruth Carr's had 2 horses from the Ed Walker yard previously. And between those 2 horses, Aeolus and King's Coinage, they had 25 runs. Not one of them reached a place in those 25 starts. So I'm not sure the Ed Walker to Ruth Carr switch is a positive one, although that was 16 to 1 into 14 to 1 and could be well drawn in stall 17. So I'll go Strong Johnson in the hope that that stall 6 draw isn't insurmountable.
Excellent. So again, it was another competitive handicap. It was Mark's choice for Matthew. This is in the 240 Ripon, the Silver Trophy handicap, and Strong Johnson, which is an interesting one, for Andrew. 3 o'clock back at Newbury. It's the Summer Sizzler handicap. The sun's going to be shining down on the course. This class 2 will kick off with 14 runners declared. It's over 7 furlongs. This was one that, again, even on the market, it doesn't take a genius to look at it, but it's sort of 6 to 1 bar the field, or 6 to 1 the field, I think. Open Mind is currently favourite on here. Classic just in behind. 9 to 1 bar those. But again, looks quite competitive. There was one before I go to be with you two guys that I wanted to give a little bit of a mention to. Again,
it's Lethal Nymph, isn't it? You Clive Cox lover. It's Lethal Nymph because you're in love with Clive Cox.
No.
Oh, damn.
He was one that I actually just not necessarily skimmed over, but found him fairly easy to dismiss. This one, like it wouldn't be. I mean, I will put it up as a selection, but from a betting perspective, the price is in and around where we should be, and it would be like it's a little bit clingy. And there's a line that I've got at the end of it as well that probably puts him off it. But Scholarship, I thought looked quite interesting because they're replacing.
Clive Cox
They're replacing.
I'm paying you for this.
They're replacing the cheek pieces now, so they're putting first-time blinkers on the horse. They wore the cheek pieces the last twice. They had no positive impact on the horse. But I feel like when trainers are reaching for some sort of headgear, suggests that there's not but the horse isn't given everything. So if you trust that in future they can find out a way of giving everything, you can sort of upgrade their form a little bit. But he finds himself just £1 higher than when a winner over course and distance on seasonal reappearance, which was his first run after being gelded. So there's been some water under the bridge since then. His last couple of runs haven't been very good, but they've been in cheap pieces. So I'm going to quite happily put a line through there. The one line that is like tempering enthusiasm, so we'll double bingo on that one, is that both his wins came when they were first time up. So first time up whenever he touched the race course, and then that time after he'd been gelded. But I do think he's interesting enough. He is top price at the moment, 14 to 1, and that is with 4 places up for grabs. He is a short of 8 to 1 in places. So again, like a price dependent type thing. I just think he's worth a little bit of a wild swing, but he could be one of those that completely bombs out or hopefully goes and wins. Andrew, you'll have a far better established insight into this race. Looks another good race though.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. There's a few interesting statistical angles. One of those being William Haggis putting a visor on one of his horses for the first time. That's been a profitable angle this century. He's only done it something like, I think, 65 times, had 13 winners. You'd have made a good profit. Alpha Capture was one I was interested in at Glorious Goodwood. I think he was due to running one of those abandoned races on the final day. It's probably a good job it was abandoned because he then ran an absolute stinker at Ascot next time out. But yeah, up in trip in headgear, kind of quite a sort of strange move. They have experimented with other headgear previously. He did finish second by a short head in first time cheek pieces on one occasion. So yeah, maybe he could go well at 20 to 1. Scholarship again was on the radar. He's only ever won first time up. He's 2 from 2 on his seasonal debuts. Is the 6-week break sufficient? Will he be fresh enough? Possibly. Lethal Nymph was the interesting one. The other Clive Cox runner. Now he won this with River Nymph in 2020. And a half brother to Lethal Nymph. They've got the same dam called Little Nymph. There's a lot of nymphs here. It gets very confusing, so stay with me. But Little Nymph was a 4-time winner of 7 furlong handicaps. You could back the size progeny in a handicap company and make a good profit. Lethal Nymph's been generally sort of running from the front over 6 furlong. Looks like he's not been getting home, but I just wonder whether going back up to 7 furlongs, he ran well over the trip at Sandown last summer. Maybe that could be the angle here. So I'd also respect the favourite, open mind. You back all Saeed bin Saror trained handicappers, 4-year-olds are older, you make a good profit. He's been in good form of late. So yeah, Lethal Nymph, tentative pick. Stall 13 might be no good again. So we're sort of, I'd like to see the draw. I'd like to see whether the forecast headwind is going to be as strong as perhaps it could be before really getting involved in this race.
Excellent. So basically, Clive Cox does win the Summer Sizzler handicap, or does he, Matty? What do you fancy?
I fancy the old boy, Accidental Agent. Although I am surprised that Isla Kai's turned up here, given there is a race from at Ripon over a mile. He'd be racing well, it's at 0 to 85, so he'd be rated 89, but obviously he'd be racing slightly higher out of the weights. I'm surprised they've turned up here and not at Ripon. But so that's one to watch out for. But I do like, I've got to go for Accidental Agent. I mean, I think I put him up on the last time I was on the weekend watch. It was 5th, beaten a couple of lengths as well. He was given no run as well. He's shown glimpses this season that he's ready to strike. He's off a mark in that. I think last season he finished second in the Victoria Cup off 109. I think it was. I just can't leave him alone again. It was beating 8 lengths in the Victoria Cup on an unfavourable soft ground. Slowly away in the Buckingham Palace Stakes. Those are the only 2 runs that he's really been poor this season. As I said, he bounced back to form, 3rd in the 5th in the Bunbury Cup, beating 3 lengths. The one that Biggles won. And if he got that gap at the right time, I think he'd have gone at least 2nd. He'd have gone so close. And he travelled really well, and he just couldn't get through the gap originally. Similar form in the Racing League at Chepstow last time out, only beating a length and a quarter. Same story, didn't get much of a gap, finished off well. So he's keeping on in his races. It's not like he's backpedaling. I think he is getting into form again. And he's been dropped a further pound, and he's got to be going close off 98. And what I don't think he's a strong handicap whatsoever for a Class 2 at the course.
I like it. So we've got 3 different selections in there. So again, it just shows how competitive the racing does look this Saturday. Matty, it is my turn to come to you next, but seeing as Andrew already started to tip up in the Great St Wilfrid Stakes, which is our next race we'll be looking at, it's the 3:15 at Ripon. It's a Class 2 over 6 furlong. We have got the maximum field size. We've got all 20. I say all 20. We've got 20 declared. 5 of the last 6 winners of this were 5-year-olds, but it's 9-year-old Summerhand who heads the market. He's a top price 6-1, but against 10 to 1 bar, another juicy looking handicap to get stuck into. Feel like this is a sign, Andrew. I feel like it was fate that you started to get so eager at this race. We got a nap in here.
Yeah, I spent about 2 hours on this race, which probably isn't very sensible given we had 3 hours to look at about 8 races. But yeah, I went down the rabbit hole again. In terms of the draw, stalls 1 to 5 have got a poor record. 1 from 75, I think it is, in the last 15 runnings. I mean, last year's when it came from stall 6, but we had an unusually small field, only 16 runners. That was Intrinsic Bond who came across to the near side. So I'd just be, obviously we'll get some clues as to what happens in the consolation race, the Silver Trophy at 240. But, at the moment, I'm looking for those drawn middle to high. Again, those higher up the weights tend to struggle as well. It's generally been horses carrying sort of 9 stone 1 or less. So I'd be a little bit worried about Anthem National, King of Bavaria, and Summerhand, as well as Aramis Grey. And running styles, it generally pays to be up with the pace. And Aramis Grey's a hold-up horse, that would worry me for her. And course form again is. I'm surprised there's only 5 course and distance winners in this race. Normally, you get these Ripon handicaps. Think, course form's important, and then you realise, actually, 8 of the 10 are have won here previously. So the pick is 12th Night. I tipped up in Racing and Football Outlook on Monday. First run for Informed Paul Midgley, having left Ruth Carr. Has actually made a switch of yard previously, went from Archie Watson to Ruth Carr and won at the first time of asking for new connections. Got some good form here at Ripon. I think it's 1 win and 3 close defeats from 4 runs. Stall 9. Hopefully that's okay. Brazen Bolt was another interesting one based on the sort of time of year with him. He's got a really good record in late August, early September. I thought he'd go well. And the other one is Cairn Gorm, who I thought was closer to the strong early pace than ideal when winning at York last time. You look at that race, I think of the first 6 home, 4 of them came from well off the pace. The other one who didn't was the 4th Manila Scouse, who obviously has done well since, finishing second by a neck to Aberama Gold and then winning the next twice. You go further down the field, horses like Musica in 14th were up the pace and ran well next time. Even Murby, an 80 to 1 shot, finished 12th after racing on the front end. That came out and ran well behind Manila Scouse next time out. So Cairn Gorm wasn't exactly disputing the lead, but he was only just behind the front end that day. So I thought it was a run worthy of an upgrade. And yeah, so that'll do for me. But main play is 12th Night, 14 to 1. Ichiwazi.
Nice, I like that. Matty, how do you see the race?
It's completely against my morals to tip a favourite of a 20 runner handicap, but I am going to put Summergand up. I just think that this is his day in the sun. I think I put him up last time at York, and I said, look, he's been aimed at a big pot. I just couldn't quite tell which one it was, and he ran well there. It was fourth in the Skybet Dash behind Aberama Gold, and obviously he went and won a good one next time out, Stewards Cup. Manila Scouse in second, has won twice since, so he ran well. He's run twice in this race before, and it was drawn in stall 3 last year when there was a complete near side bias, as there often is around this time of year at Ripon, and it was 4th in the race, first out of his group of 4, so he ran well in the circumstances. And it's his first time without headgear though since February, when beating a length of listed companies, which could be a positive or a negative. But the only year he's not won in August was 2019, but he did place in both of those starts. He's got a good record in August as well. However, as it is completely against my morals to stick with to back a favourite in here, I'm going to have to go for one more. That's Hyper Focus for Tim Easterby, who has won this race a couple of times in recent years. And you've got the cheek pieces on. And he was a good winner recently as well, off this mark now, mark of 93. And that was a beat Intrinsic Bond, who is now rated, I think, £6 higher. And got a good draw. That's the only thing. Another negative with Summergand is he's drawn 7. It's not. I would have liked it to a bit higher as well. Hyper Focus drawn in 19, back in his last winning mark. So I think he'll go well at a nice price as well. So I'll give you 2.
I like it, and I know what you mean when you get to certain types of races, especially certain field sizes, about getting in with them. But when you have that love for the horse, you've got to do it. There's no harm, especially with the price that he is. As much as he is favourite, you can still get 11 to 2 about him. There's bookies offering up to 7 places for this one as well. It'd be a fifth of the odds, worst case scenario. So potential, I mean, it's not, is it? But potential freebie. He's not going out the first 7, is he? Surely. Right, we will move on to the last race for the ITV7, the last race that we'll be covering. It's the 3:35 at Newbury. It's the Hungerford Stakes, the Group 2 over 7 furlongs. And for me, I talked about that first race, got a little bit excited. You know, there was a beaten Derby favourite in there. That was a Group 3. This is a Group 2. Like, we've bookended all these fantastic big field competitive handicaps with what I think is some seriously good racing. So Jumbie took this race 12 months ago. Both Pogo and CHINDIT were in behind, and they both reoppose here. It's CHINDIT, the other course and distance winner, that actually heads the market at the moment at 3 to 1. But last year's winner, Jumbie, is trying to vie for favouritism. This is one that I've done a bit of work on, and this is one where I think I found the winner, and I think it's quite straightforward. So it probably is best suited if I just go first. Just say everything that needs to be said, and then you two can just nod and agree, I think. So we're going to do that. I am the host. I get to call the rules. So I touched on the fact that Jumbie, Pogo, and CHINDIT were in the race last year. It is those 3 that are towards the head of the market. So I said CHINDIT was favourite. Jumbie's trying to vie for that. It's 11 to 4 CHINDIT at the time of recording. Jumbie's 4 to 1. Pogo is actually 11 to 2. And then there's a few at like single figure prices behind that as well. But I looked at last year's race because I thought that was probably a good place to start. I thought, let's just go back in hindsight, look at the form of it, see if we could work out how we thought that would pan out. And I could plan it out to how the market predicted it. So we ended up having, I think CHINDIT was Pogo was favourite, CHINDIT was second favourite, and then Jumbie was third. Well, not third favourite, but he was third priced out of those 3. And unfortunately, they didn't finish in the order that you would have suspected according to the market. So Jumbie did win it, maybe a little bit of a surprise. So that didn't quite work out doing the formy stuff, but it didn't really put me off the point I wanted to make for this year's one. I looked at the last 6 Racing Post ratings for every runner in the field. I wanted to see what sort of form they're coming into the race, because some of these horses have been around the block. The race last year was run on like real quick ground, whereas there is a little bit of rain about. It's not going to be soft, but I do think the ground's going to be a little bit slower, which means I think that's going to help CHINDIT of the 3 of them. So off those last 6 Racing Post ratings, if we allow for the allowances that are in there, the weight for age, sex allowance, all that sort of stuff, CHINDIT comes out well clear. So the way I did it across those last 6, if we just look at the last 6 and the figure, CHINDIT comes out £5 clear on the averages. Jumby's the next best, £5, but then within £5 of him, you've got 5 more runners, so it's quite close in behind. If we look at the top 3 Racing Post ratings of those last 6, CHINDIT's £4 clear of Jumby, and Pogo's in there as well. But again, within £4 of them, so the same margin, there's another 5 runners, so quite close in behind. And then looking at the Racing Post ratings on good ground or better, so it's not going to be as quick as it was last year, but we'll still allow that to happen. CHINDIT's £4 clear of everything. And the next in the betting is Witch Hunter, with Jumby a further pound behind. So I just think that CHINDIT on form looks like he deserves to be favourite. And as much as they're like sort of vying for favouritism, I think CHINDIT should be a bit short. So CHINDIT's the one that I fancy. But I did mention in the last bit there about Witch Hunter. I think this horse does have a bit to find on form, so I'm not sure it's got a winning chance with CHINDIT. But when I did those numbers, and even before I did that, when I started just look at each of the runners, I thought Witch Hunter had a bit of a chance if you took CHINDIT out of the race. And obviously CHINDIT did bomb in it last year, or didn't run as well as maybe he could have done. So if that sort of thing happened, then I think Witch Hunter's worth a mention at a big, big price. I'll make the little case of that one as well. So I said about that sample size of the Racing Post ratings. If we move those Racing Post ratings and I look at the top 3, or even just look at the ground stuff, they didn't really vary that much for Witch Hunter. There's only a £2 variance. And if you look at his all 6, if you take the best 3, or if you just take the ones that are on good or better ground, just does it on any conditions and on almost every single day. Lots of boxes are being ticked on that. I think he shouldn't be a 33 to 1 poke. So I'm like CHINDIT, I do fancy would be the level of like sort of next best for the Saturday. But because of the fact that he did run so poorly in the race last year, I think Witch Hunter at 33s, I'm going to do what Matty does. I'm going to tip up a favourite and then put one up at a big price. Witch Hunter would be a definite stake saver. And if CHINDIT does manage to stay favourite and there's a bookie that's doing a without market, I would back Witch Hunter without, because I think Witch Hunter could easily beat everything else in the field. CHINDIT's the only one I'm a little bit concerned about. But as I said before, with horses like that Sumo Sam, I don't want to put up an each way horse if I don't think he's got a chance of winning. So I do think Witch Hunter does have a bit of a chance of winning. So, I mean, I've summed up there, haven't I, guys? CHINDIT wins, Witch Hunter comes second, and just forget what the rest of the market's telling us.
Is he still talking, mate? I'm not enough.
I am a waffler. I get so excited about certain races, but I think CHINDIT deserves to be shorter priced than he is. Like I said, I'm a tiny bit worried that he might just bomb a little bit like he did last year, because form suggested he could have run well last year and he didn't. So Witch Hunter's the second choice. But Matty, I'm going to let you speak for a little bit. How do you see the race? Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, you are wrong, unfortunately, because Marban wins it. So, yeah, well, the race has opened up massively since Sacred wasn't declared just a couple of hours ago. I think she was 7 to 4, and it kind of looked like a penalty kick for her. She's off to York next week, I believe. So it's opened up the field, as you say. Yeah, Marban for me. There was a good third in the Lennox Stakes last time out behind Gorby's Goodwood on a softer ground than ideal, behind Kinross and Isaac Shelby. Now, if you think Kinross has beaten Sacred before, I think it was by 6 lengths. Marban was only just behind Sacred. Now, on that evidence, Marban's overpriced at 9 to 1, I think. And I love it. I do love this horse. Like, he was second in the Cathedral Stakes behind in front of Carden, Kingston winner, and behind Run to Freedom, who was the second in the July Cup. So he split his elders. I mean, I know 3-year-olds don't have a fantastic record in this contest, but he's proven that he can run well against his elders. And he ran well at that in that race at Goodwood too. He's just, I'm going to say, like, this quicker round will really suit him. He doesn't handle soft whatsoever. And so I do think Marban will win. However, I think Moss Hampshire's an interesting one, dropping in trip with blinkers on. I think you can tell what the tactics are going to be there. Send him out from the front as he did at York, where he beat Zarab, I think it was, quite well. Pogo as well, another one's going to go forward. CHINDIT will go forward. So it's an interesting race, but I do think the pace that will be on will set it up for Marban, who should travel well in behind the leaders from his nice draw and win by 2 lengths, I'll go with.
Well, that's calmed me down a little bit, isn't it? Andrew, can you give me any positives for the way that I pitched CHINDIT and Witch Hunter?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a short list of 2, but sadly they're the front 2 in the market, so that's not much help really if you're looking for a value bet. I mean, Chindit's had 10 runs below Group 1 level. He's won 7 of them, and within those 10 runs, he's never lost to Ascot below Group 1 level. So I'm surprised he didn't run there in the Summer Mile. He was entered because I know he's been sold because he's going to be retired to stud in India. So I assumed, oh, maybe they didn't want to run him again. We wouldn't see him. But then, of course, they turned up at Ascot. So they entered him, didn't they? The Sussex Stakes pulled him out because of the ground on the day. So he's back in his grade. I mean, you look at his stats below Group 1 level, he's odds on. But of course, it's the trip. It's 7 furlongs. His best recent efforts have come at a mile. I think he's won one of his last 4 starts at this trip, and he was well beaten over it last year in this very race, finishing 8th of the 9 runners. So you get to the point where you think, well, if it was a mile, I'd be happy. If it was a mile at Ascot, it'd be nap material. 7 furlongs at Newbury, his chance is probably covered in his price. Wouldn't surprise you, if he won it again. Then took up stud duties, kind of like as a sort of horse racing fan. I'm hoping that happens. As a punter, I'll probably side with Jumbie, who's the slightly bigger price, last year's winner, and will be suited by the return to this track. But it's a fascinating race. The draw could play a part with only 10 runners. Pace probably coming from Pogo and Stall 10. We'll get some clues earlier on as to whether it's going to be one of these Newbury races where you want to be on the rail or more likely prominent down the middle of the track. Is there going to be a headwind strong enough to affect the front runners? Maybe not. Will the rain get into the ground, or will they not water because the rain's forecast and then it doesn't arrive and it turns out good to firm? So there's so many imponderables at this stage that I think it's very difficult to bet in until probably about 5 minutes before the race, when you know what the draw's doing, you know what the headwind's doing, you know what the ground is. So I'll go Jumbie, but it's a really tricky punting race, and I wish you the best of luck with Witch Hunter.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and that is a key thing with it. The ground is going to be a real interesting one because, like you said, there is potential thunderstorm warnings up until midday tomorrow around Newbury. But then even on that forecast, it doesn't seem like there's that much rain. Even the Racing Post site today, a couple of times has changed from good to soft, and then it's gone back to good. So whether that's just twitching their API with not having the right details or not, I don't know. But yeah, if it was officially good to firm, that would make me less keen on CHINDIT because, like you say, coming back to 7 furlongs in it, but it will be CHINDIT for me, so that'll be a win only bet, and then I will be having a good little bet on Witch Hunter each way, or potentially maybe even in the place market as well. It was Jumbie for you, Andrew, and it was Marban for Matty. Right, that's the 7 races done. Do we have anything from anywhere else?
Nope, not from me.
Matty,
No,
nothing
not from me today.
Yes, that's good. Well, we can wrap it up quickly for the viewers then. And to wrap it up, we need to give our nap of the weekend. So I've got really excited about plenty of horses, but Arrest is the nap for me in that first race, the 150, the Jeffrey Freer Stakes. Matty, where's your nap?
I'm going to have to go against you and go with Klondike. And given the form that you're in, I might regret that in the end.
The viewers are up in arms. They want to nap in different races. It's fine. Just have it all on Witch Hunter. Andrew, your nap for the weekend.
Yeah, Devil's Angel, the 205 at Newmarket, the Grey Horse Handicap.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for helping me go through the 7 races on ITV. It's been insightful, and I think it's helped make things a little bit clearer in what looks like some very competitive action. We will be back again, hopefully next week, for York's Ebor meeting. See you again soon.